Shavua Tov, good Vach to everybody. Regards from warm Brooklyn, center of the universe. Tonight's true story took place approximately 200 years ago. There was a family, unfortunately, that couldn't pay their debts, and the nobleman had them thrown into a dungeon until they could pay. Didn't make a lot of sense, but that was the style in those days. In fact, many rabbis used to go around to collect money called pidyon shvuyim, to redeem the captives for the express purpose of trying to free these families from a horrible, long, drawn-out death in these dungeons. It once happened that a young couple with a few children were thrown into the dungeon, and no one was able to raise the funds to free them. Happened to be that the mother at the time was in her late stages of her pregnancy, and she gave birth to a little boy in this dungeon. And the community, although they were too poor to ransom them out, they did manage to bribe the guards to allow a mohel to go and circumcise this little child on the 8th day of his life. After the mohel did his job, did his mitzvah, entered the child into the covenant, he was taken out of the dungeon, and life seemed to be, well, they're stuck. But the guard, who had been bribed for this occasion, turned to the community and said, hey, listen guys, if you'll give me a nice amount of money, I can get everyone drunk, and I can take this family out and escape with them and bring them to their freedom. So the community quickly gathered that amount of money, much less than the debt that was owed, and they gave it to the guard. The guard jumped down into the dungeon and quickly said to the family, run, leave, go, now's your time to escape. And in a big crazy rush, the family ran out of the dungeon and onto the waiting wagon, and they were rushed away to freedom. 30 minutes into the trip, they realized that in the rush and the craziness, they had left their little 8-day-old baby behind. And they turned to the kind guard, well-paid guard, and asked him to turn around and go back and get their kid. But that was not an option, because he'd get killed for trying to escape with them. He refused. He took them, dropped them off, and returned to his job, and made up a story to cover for the family's escape. Meanwhile, his little 8-day-old boy, the guard had no children, he managed to convince the nobleman to let him adopt the child. He brought up the child as his own, he loved him, he gave him the best life that some kind of Russian guard could give to a child, but everyone used to laugh at the child and tell him he's really not their child, he's a Jewish child, and the proof is that he's circumcised. And to make a long story short, at the age of 9 years old, this little boy ran away and found the Jewish community, approached them, was welcomed with a loving embrace, was kind of adopted by a family, and he was given a Jewish education, and he was actually quite a smart boy, and he became a very good student. It bothered him very much. They had no idea where his family was, who his family was. He didn't know his name or anything about his family. He once went to a great Rebbe. His Rebbe's name was Michel Zlotchover. And he said, Rebbe, can you help me find my family? And the Rebbe said to him, this is what I can do for you. And he gave him a little piece of paper. And he wrote some words on it. And he put it in a little necklace and said, wear this at all times. And on your wedding day, ask the officiating rabbi to open it up and read it, and he'll know what to do. The young man knew nothing about what was written inside, but he accepted it. He accepted that right now there's nothing more he can do to find his family. And he went on with his life, and he was a very great student. And when he reached a marriageable age, a very wonderful girl was proposed for him, and they met, and they decided to marry. As they were standing under the chuppah, this fine young man with this fine young lady, with her family around, and his adopted family around, all of a sudden he remembered, the Rebbe's told me to hand this little parchment to the officiating rabbi. So he went to the rabbi and said, I got something to show you. And he shows him the thing, he opens it up, and it has just a couple of words, and it says, shall a brother marry a sister? Question mark. The rabbi couldn't understand what's going on. Brother, sister, what's going on over here? So he calls over the bride's family and he says, how many kids do you have? And they say, well, we have a daughter and we have another few kids. He says, did you ever have another child? And all of a sudden, They got emotional and said, yes, yes, we had a baby, and on his circumcision day we were rushed out of the dungeon and we were forced to leave our child behind. You have no idea if he's even alive. The rabbi said, did he have any birthmarks, any way to recognize us? Yeah, he had a certain birthmark on his shoulder. The rabbi asked the young man, please take off your shirt. Sure enough, right there was the birthmark. And the rabbi said, guess what? A brother can't marry a sister. This is your long-lost son. So the party didn't go to waste. The music, the food, everything was celebrated with the reunion of this young man with his family. And they lived happily ever after. Obviously, marrying other people. But one important thing we see from this miraculous story is how beautiful, how powerful, how holy are the words of our great people. And guess what? Since each and every one of us has a spark of Hashem inside of us, we're all pretty great. Let's use that power properly. Hope you have an easy fast tomorrow. Have a great week.